The stock market is at record highs. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that these tariffs were going to sink this economy by this time, and they didn't.
And that's why HBO pays you millions and millions of dollars a year to do Democrat Party propaganda. Always wrong, but never in doubt. The average Democrat, Bill Maher, of course. Yeah, I was going around saying that everything Trump does is going to tank the economy, and now I think President Trump said it's maybe the best economy in the history of the world. Never been a better economy anywhere, rather. That may be a slight overstatement on my part, but everything is going swimmingly, and even Bill Maher. There was a clown on CNN who said, gosh, we keep saying everything is terrible. And that's why nobody believes a damn thing that we say anymore, because everything that we utter is a lie. Democrats, rascally rabbits that they are. Oh, we've just been talking about this Sydney Sweeney American Eagle ad. I don't think I own any American Eagle things, not that I'm aware of. But the Democrats are attacking the company because it's called American, and they hate America, and Eagle, and they think it's like an American eagle, and they hate that. That's why they put those Cuisinarts in the sky, hoping to turn bald eagles into mincemeat, chop them up with their Cuisinarts in the sky. But Sydney Sweeney's American Eagle ad shows a crucial shift toward whiteness. That's the NBC ad, NBC News, MSDNC advertisements, always mirrors of society, they say at NBC News, and sometimes what they reflect is ugly and startling. No, well, maybe sometimes, but certainly not in this case. If you guys have anything to do with it, for example, you had that transgender guy pretending to be a Bud Light model, a drinker of bottles of Bud Light, and that was ugly and ridiculous. I've got to say, you people, can I just say you people, just amazing. Dylan Mulvaney is what you consider to be normal, and Sydney Sweeney, because she's an attractive American blonde woman with blue eyes, you guys turn into Hitler. And, it's the old Russian playbook. You accuse the other guy of doing whatever it is you're doing. Now, I was watching the television news, flipping around in the 5 a.m. hour this morning, because that's just what I do. These are the things that I do. And they've got an anchor man on at 5 a.m. His name is Todd Pirro, I think, Todd Pirro. And he was talking about this Sydney Sweeney American Eagle ad that has the Democrats again playing with their brains in the middle of the street, and they couldn't be crazier. And it's eugenics. Yeah, like Margaret Sanger, who Hillary Clinton has the Margaret Sanger Award, and Ted Turner has the Margaret Sanger Award, and Jane Fonda has the Margaret Sanger Award, and Lyndon Baines Johnson got the Margaret Sanger Award, and you guys exterminate, 4 out of 10 black babies. The Nazis killed 6 out of 10 Jews during the Holocaust. You guys do this year after year, decade after decade, 40% of the black population in the United States. The Margaret Sanger Award, they call them the Maggie Awards. Just amazing stuff. They give them to Democrats. Democrats are Margaret Sanger, Democrat. Just amazing. And they have this genes thing. It's a homonym confusion for them. 2 words that they have the same pronunciation, genes and genes, and because Democrats are not good with words or the English language, they use the words, but they don't know what they mean. And, they're talking about genes. Oh, you guys are so smart. You've outsmarted everybody again. It's a homonym. See, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. It's a homonym joke. The pronunciation is the same, but the words have different meanings. So they're all hung up on that. And this morning I was watching in the 5 a.m. hour, and Todd Pirro talking about this Sydney Sweeney thing. And I thought that he he might be stealing my stuff here, but that's okay. He summed it up kind of interestingly.
In the end, doesn't this come down to the fact that this ad is simply normal, and the left hates the fact that Donald Trump is bringing normal back to America?
I heard that, and I said, oh, that's not a bad line by Todd Pirro. And it sounds kind of familiar because, we've been talking about normal here on the Chris Plante Show for a long time. Remember, normal is one of our kind of slogans. We have T-shirts that just say, remember normal. We have coffee mugs that simply say, remember normal. And Todd Pirro said what they're really angry about is that this woman, Sydney Sweeney, represents normal. And the left is anti-normal. They are abnormal. They are brain-diseased, abnormal, mentally ill people who have sexual issues that can barely be enumerated at this point. They're so numerous. Just amazing stuff. Yeah, and the Maggie words, and they're bringing up, ironically, Margaret Sanger, who is one of you, the eugenics queen. Again, some of her work adopted by Joseph Mengele and the Nazis of the Socialist Workers' Party. Just amazing, amazing stuff. And then they're voting for Zohran Mamdani in New York, who's a commie and a genocidal anti-Semite. And by the way, since you're talking about eugenics and saying everybody's Nazi and fascist and all this stuff, and they say the use of the word America or American in American Eagle is fascist and Nazi because they're anti-American fundamentally and mentally ill fundamentally. And then Eagle, that makes them angry too because of the American bald eagle. So they're furious about this. They should really all self-immolate. We should declare like 1 month because, they love months, Pride Month, which is not Pride in America or Pride in being human or anything like that, but in being, a tranny or something like that. That's what they're proud of, Pride Month. We should have Self-Immolation Month for the Democrats. And maybe that should be August, which is about to be it, because it's already fiery hot, and they're already terrified by the temperature. So maybe they should. And 8 Democrats have self-immolated in the last couple of years. And maybe we should have Self-Immolation Month for them. Instead of just Scream at the Sky Day, we could have Self-Immolation Month, and Democrats would be self-immolating all over the country. And that would reduce the stress on parking in Washington, D.C., for example, which would be good. They're amazing. All right, now, let's see. Let's go to the next crazy story because the Democrats, the Democrats, they cause everything. This I stumbled across this story today. You remember Trayon White? Trayon White, who is a black man. His name is Trayon White. And he is a D.C. City Council member who was kicked off the D.C. City Council because he's been charged with accepting lots of cash money and bribes and stuff. And then they had a special election, Ward 8 in Southeast Washington, D.C., and they had a special election, and they had a whole bunch of Democrats in the race. But guess who won? Trayon White won. Trayon White's the guy, speaking of climate change and global warming, who made a video of himself driving in his car in Washington, D.C., and it had started to snow because it was winter time. And the Democrat elected official in our nation's capital, Trayon White, said this.
Man, it just started snowing out of nowhere this morning, man. Y'all better pay attention to this climate control, man. This climate manipulation. And D.C. keep talking about we're a resilient city. And that's a model based off the Rothschilds controlling the climate to create natural disasters. They can pay for it and own the cities, man. Be careful.
That's right. Be very careful. Well, they had a special election because Trayon White, FBI arrests, taking bribes. And guess what? He won. He won very handily. They had a special election, and Trayon White won. He got the majority of votes. They had Trayon White got lots of votes. Fellow Democrats, a woman named Bunn, B-U-N-N, got some votes. And Mike Austin, another Democrat, got some votes. And Salim Adolfo got some votes. But Trayon White won, so he's coming back to the D.C. City Council because the voters voted for him. And Sheila Bunn had hoped to win, but she didn't win. And Trayon White, he is back in the Washington, D.C. City Council. The City Council is talking about kicking him out again. He had been expelled from the just amazing stuff. Yes, sir. I am telling you. Tsunami. It's a tsunami of stupid. We've got a tsunami going on in the Pacific Ocean and went by the islands of Hawaii, and I think everybody's okay. Oh, there's a fun story out of there, too, though. Did you see this? That Oprah, Orca, Oprah Winfrey, which is Harpo spelled backward, like Harpo Marx, spelled backward. Did you know that? You probably knew that. But Oprah Winfrey, she's in the news again today because she owns a huge property in Hawaii, gigantic, huge property in Hawaii. And the tsunami was coming, and people were fleeing and going for high ground. And turns out on her giant, huge, humongous property, she has private road that goes through, and it's closed because this is my property. Get off my property. She's out there, with suspenders and a 12-gauge shotgun. Get out here. Get off my land. Oprah Winfrey responds to claims private road closed during Hawaii tsunami. And there's a guy living in Hawaii, and he's trying to flee the tsunami coming because he doesn't want to die and be swept away like that movie about the tsunami in the place. And Oprah Winfrey, she's got people managing her properties there, and they grow macadamia nuts, which sell for as much as gold by weight. And she has this property, and it's private property and a private road, and it's closed off, and the tsunami's happening, and people trying to flee the tsunami. And here's a guy trying to flee who ran into Oprah's private property.
Look at this. I think they're trying to open Oprah's road. Come on, Oprah. Save us. Road to all the way up country, bro. All the way up country. She got it all to herself. And everybody trying to get in. Cops trying to open it. Nope. Still closed.
Orca keeping her private road closed. An 8.8 magnitude undersea earthquake near Russia, where Putin, the communist, rules. And it's the east coast of Russia and the Pacific Ocean and the U.S., Japan, China, the Philippines, brace for tsunamis. And Hawaii, of course, the first waves hitting Hawaii. And the Kuril Islands, Japanese islands of Hokkaido, and all kinds of good stuff. And 8 islands of Hawaii. And Oprah, she's got private property. You're not welcome to cross her property. She doesn't care if you're washed away by the tsunami. Don't you know who she is? I told you I've got a friend. She's got an estate, like a $50 or $60 million estate in Montecito, California. And a friend of mine there lives in Montecito and has works in real estate. And he tells me that Oprah's estate in Montecito nobody lives there. It has a water bill of $50,000 a month. $50,000 a month, and she doesn't go there. She's a very wealthy woman, and that's fine. Congratulations to Orca. She's done very well, doing whatever, a talk show or something, a couple of movies. And she's fine. Oprah was always fine with me. But here it is, 2,000 acres of land on Maui, and, she owns this farm, and it's, there's a volcano nearby. But you can't cross her property on her private road when the tsunami's coming because she's Oprah, because she's a Democrat. The big wireless companies are pulling one over on all of us, and that's why it's time to switch to Consumer Cellular. I switched to Consumer Cellular, getting the same fast, reliable, nationwide, big wireless coverage, all the same towers and everything else, without the big wireless cost, the cash. It's not just about saving money, also not about not being used and abused by the big cell phone carriers. You probably don't know how much data you use every month. Most people over 50 use less than 8 gigs of data in a month. But big wireless, they shove you into an unlimited data plan, and because they need you to cover the cost of, 20-year-olds that are using 10 times as much data as you are. It's redistribution of data wealth. And, you're not using that data. You're the one being used. Had enough of that, went with Consumer Cellular. They set me up with a service and an amazing phone. And it's easy to switch. All you have to do is make a phone call, talk to an actual human being on an actual phone, based right here in the actual United States, not a bot in the Philippines. So incredibly helpful people. It takes about 20 minutes to make the change. So give them a call and make the switch today. Call 1-800-760-0702. That's 800-760-0702. Yes, sir. Yeah, the tsunami. Amazing stuff. Left-wingers have a headline at Mediaite. Weather Service assures North Dakotans, people in North Dakota, there is no threat of tsunami in the landlocked state. That's your government bureaucracy at work. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Let us go back to the telephones, Michael, and talk to normal people. Because we don't have any Democrats on the line, so we're safe. Let's go to Mike calling from Fairfax, Virginia. Mikey, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Hello, Chris, sir. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. What do you say? What do you know?
Well, I was telling Jasmine, and she chuckled after I told her, so I think it's safe to say it on the air.
Uh-huh.
I think I may have been a racist since I was a kid.
Oh, no.
Based on that Gene story, I'm not sure what to do.
Well, because you think that genes, Genes, can make a person more attractive, more appealing, more entertaining?
Yeah. So the equivalent in my day, I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, was, Jordache jeans. And I distinctly remember, sort of burned in my memory, is Brooke Shields with the Jordache jeans commercial. Now, Granted, she's brunette.
Right.
But
Good
she
point.
was blue-eyed.
Okay, all right.
So I was like, okay, maybe I wasn't racist because, jeans, and I was like, wow, she's hot.
Yeah.
But then I realized maybe Cheryl Teagues also was in those jeans in a commercial, and she is blonde and blue-eyed. So.
True. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, it's kind of a worldwide universal norm that women from Sweden and Norway and Scandinavia tend to be appealing to, and as I understand it, Jasmine, men that fit that description, but might they be considered attractive as well? Like Scandinavian, blonde, and blue-eyed? She's got mixed feelings about that. Wants to keep an open mind, which is what normal people do.
In the end, doesn't this come down to the fact that this ad is simply normal, and the left hates the fact that Donald Trump is bringing normal back to America?
Yeah, that's got an awful lot to do with it. The Democrat Party is so demented, so mentally ill, so sociopathic, so hostile to the word American, and by extension, hostile to the word eagle, and hostile to white people, and hostile to attractive people because so many of them revel in their unattractiveness. Aren't they amazing? But I started talking about the ancient Brooke Shields ad, which was, what did I say? It was Jordache. Yeah, I don't think I ever wore Jordache or Calvin Klein. But turns out it's Calvin Klein jeans that Brooke Shields, who was a very young underage model, sort of Jeffrey Epstein style model, and then actress in a few movies that didn't get a lot of notice because she was never much of an actress, but she always seemed like a perfectly nice person, Brooke Shields. And she did a TV commercial, an ad campaign for Calvin Klein jeans. And we went, thanks to Al Gore's amazing internet, peace be upon him, we went to Al Gore's amazing internet. We found the commercial apparently from 1980, which Michael was terrified to learn is 45 years ago. And Brooke Shields, who is there on the floor. I think it's like a white backdrop and a white floor, and she's struggling to pull on her jeans and trying real hard to get them on. And listen to this, because this sounds more like eugenics and Margaret Sanger than anything from today. But here is Brooke Shields in the, they call it an iconic Calvin Klein jeans ad.
The secret of life lies hidden in the genetic code.
Genetic code.
Genes are fundamental in determining the characteristics of an individual and passing on these characteristics to succeeding generations.
Genes.
Occasionally, certain conditions produce a structural change in the gene, which will bring about the process of evolution.
Evolution?
This may occur in one or more of the following ways.
How?
Firstly, by selective mating.
Selective
in which a single
mating?
gene type proves superior in transmitting its genes
Selective
to future generations.
Mating?
Secondly, by gene drift, in which certain genes may fade away while other genes persist. And finally, by natural selection,
pulling on her
which
pants.
filters out those genes better equipped than others to endure in the environment. This may result in the origin of an entirely new species.
Global warming.
Which brings us to Calvin's and the survival of the fittest.
Now her genes are
Calvin Klein jeans.
See, Calvin Klein jeans. And that's the whole thing. She is talking about genetics and natural selection. And what did she describe the meeting a mate? What was that? Selective mating? Selective mating, which is the best way, don't you think? I think everyone would agree with that. You want to be selective when it comes to mating. And that's genes. And she's talking about GENES there, right? And that was fine 45 years ago in the United States. And now the left, completely insane, mentally ill. Aren't they amazing? Yes, they are. Wah, 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 Democrat Party. Just amazing.
I like to see girls of that caliber. By caliber, of course, I mean both the size of their gun barrels and the high quality of their characters. Two meanings, caliber. It's a homonym.
It's a homonym. See, and genes, like caliber, can be a homonym. Sounds the same. Genes and genes. Two different meanings. Caliber, like Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, right there. Aren't they great? Yes, they are. Womp, womp, womp. Okay, let us take a phone call to talk to the nice people. And then I've got a New York Times taking back one of their fake stories about Gaza because really they have the journalistic standards of your average street prostitute. I say that not from personal experience, but just from general knowledge. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Jerry calling from Alexandria, Virginia. Geraldo, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Oh, thanks, sir. Just a comment there. The seismic generated waves were originally called tidal waves, and then scientists got together and followed science and figured out it had nothing to do with tidal waves. So they looked around for another name, and they found the Japanese were using the term tsunami. So they started calling it tsunami, and that's the certified term now for seismic generated waves. Then they found out later on that tsunami is Japanese for harbor waves, and they have nothing to do with harbors either.
Well, what are you going to do about this? Is that more a scientific chicanery? Yeah, tsunami, you're right. We always called them tidal waves. Everybody called them tidal waves. But then you're saying they discovered that it wasn't really a tidal matter, a tsunami or a tidal wave caused by generally seismic activity, right, Jerry?
Correct.
And that's what we have in this case near the east coast of Russia. A massive earthquake, I think 8.8 on the Richter, which is gigantic. But you're right, we did change the terminology, and it is a Japanese term. It's tsunami, tsunami, and it's kind of a fun word. And we don't see them that often, that's for sure. But tsunami is a Japanese word. And then now you're saying that tsunami may be the wrong word, too, because when you translate it from the original Japanese, it doesn't really apply to seismic activity and the waves caused by a seismic event.
Yeah, they saw them in harbors in Japan, so they called them tsunamis.
That's interesting. So we should change it again to something else, right?
Sure.
Why not? Seismic waves or something like that. Yeah, that's interesting. I saw that. I think words are fun. And Jerry, when I saw it on the board, I said, well, that's a fun thing since we have the tsunami today and everybody running around in circles and Oprah and North Dakota and all of this ridiculousness. We're kind of a ridiculous culture these days, aren't we, Jerry?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. And we're all sorry to see that. Jerry, thank you very much. Thanks for the call. I love, semantics and words and, genes. Womp, womp, womp. Homonyms. That's why I whipped out the International Man of Mystery because homonyms. All right, I just mentioned this New York Times story, and this is a real story. And in fact, Michael Pierce and I were talking about this yesterday in the studio after the show. One of the things that we didn't get to yesterday, the New York Times published a story with a photograph of a toddler, I would say, in Gaza, in Israel, where the Israelis have been providing the Gazans with everything they need to live, purified water, clean water out of the Mediterranean, electricity, hospitals and hospital supplies. The Israelis facilitated life in the Gaza, and then they were paid back with a genocidal massacre. And now the news media and the New York Times, they went to town with this photograph of a woman who looks like she's in her 40s, holding an 18-month-old child in Gaza. And you can see the child looks very, very sickly. You can see every rib. You can count the 18-month-old kid's ribs, and the kid's mouth is hanging open, and his eyes look sullen, and he looks like he's on the brink of death. And it turns out his name is Mohammed Zakaria. It's Mohammed Zakaria al-Matawak. And I like Zakaria because he's got a show on CNN, right? Fried Zucchini, Fareed Zakaria. So they got Mohammed Zakaria al-Matawak, an 18-month-old child in Gaza City, in Gaza, faces life-threatening malnutrition, the New York Times reported, with this picture of the mother who looks perfectly well-fed. In fact, she could probably lose a few pounds. She could probably peel off a few pounds. And here she is with the starving child in an indoor setting with darkness behind. And then the New York Times used a picture of this 18-month-old sucking down an empty, what do you call that, a baby bottle? Call it a baby bottle? With the kind of rubber nipple on the top, and it's clear, and there's nothing in it. And there's the child gnawing on the rubber nipple of the empty baby bottle. And another picture of the child looking to be on the brink of death. And I'm reminded of Sam Kinison. Remember the great comedian Sam Kinison, who was just hilarious, and he did a lot of very funny Somalia jokes when Somalia was being all kinds of stupid. And he said, and this is like, it applies right here to the New York Times, and Sam Kinison talked about the camera crews and the TV people going to Somalia and shooting video of the starving children and the streets of Mogadishu and beyond. And Sam Kinison said, hey, I bet the cameraman's got a sandwich in a bag. Maybe the news crew could share their lunch with the starving kids, And he said, and then he did funny stuff about Somalia, and he reached down and picked up like it's a handful of sand and let the sand drain out of his fist and say, what is this? It's sand. You live in the desert. And what's it going to be 100 years from now? It's going to be sand. You can't grow anything in sand. So, we got deserts in the United States too, but we don't live in them. Right? And I say, maybe the camera crew, and this is the case here. Maybe the New York Times, when they went into Gaza to report this story, maybe they should have brought some sandwiches, maybe some mac and cheese or something. Bring some of your Perrier, or what's other fancy word. Bring your San Pellegrino with you. But now the Washington Post doesn't have the story, but the New York Post does. New York Times stunningly rolls back claims about viral photo, multiple photos, of starving Gaza boy. And Victor Nava has the story at the New York Post. And it is pretty amazing because they almost never do this. But the New York Times appended appended. That means changed. A story it published last week containing a shocking image of a child purportedly suffering from starvation in Gaza, with an editor's note on Tuesday. They did this yesterday. The note informs readers that Mohammed Zakaria al-Mutawak, the Gazan boy, quote, diagnosed with severe malnutrition, end quote, and pictured in the article, also suffers from pre-existing health problems. Wait a minute. Well, that would explain why his apparent mother looks like she's got a refrigerator full of everything, but the kid is starving. The New York Times said, we recently ran a story about Gaza's most vulnerable civilians, including Mohammed Zakaria al-Mutawak, who is about 18 months old and suffers from severe malnutrition, a spokesperson for the New York Times said in a statement. Isn't that amazing? And then they show the pictures. We have since learned new information, including from the hospital that treated him and his medical records, and have updated our story to add context about his pre-existing health problems, the New York Times spokesperson said. You know, they get all their information from Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. And in addition, these additional details give readers a greater understanding of his situation. Now, the stark images of little Mohammed shown with a gaunt face and his spine protruding through his back, and as his mother held him, went viral last week, with many using him as the poster child for starvation in the Palestinian enclave. And you may remember that Netanyahu said about 5 days ago, we don't have a policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu said, and that infuriated the Democrats.
When you hear the Israeli prime minister saying there's no starvation happening in Gaza, what, do you believe he's lying?
Of course he's lying. He is a disgusting liar.
And that's Bernie Sanders, a communist in the United States, supporting the radical Islamic terrorist group Hamas, which is genocidal, and they'd kill him in a heartbeat. He's Jewish, but he's too stupid and too corrupt to know. So there it is. It went viral last week. Poster child starvation in the Palestinian enclave amid Israel's war against Hamas. Now, days after the New York Times published the images of Mohammed, pro-Israel group Honest Reporting noted on July 27th that the boy's older brother, Jaoud, is standing in the background, appearing to be in far better condition. That's because he's stealing all the food. So then they learned that the child suffers from a muscle disorder, which receives specialized nutrition and physical therapy provided by Israel, by the way. Noted that in a CNN segment last week that her son was happy and able to sit upright. Isn't that amazing? The New York Times note did not elaborate on the pre-existing health problems from which Mohammed suffers. However, pro-Israeli journalist David Collier reported last week the young boy has cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy. He's got hypoxemia, was born with a serious genetic disorder, citing a May 2025 medical record from Gaza. So the New York Times, they're reporting a fake story. And then they came on and said, oh, yeah, by the way, also the front page headline above the fold in the Washington Post today, more than 60,000 lives lost in Gaza. And they're citing Hamas as the source for that. They say that the health ministry in Gaza, which is 100% Hamas, and here it is, the lie continues every day. You prove that they're lying, and the next day they come back and lie to you again with the same lie over and over again. It's like Russian collusion. But, you know, in support of the genocidal death cult called Hamas that started all of this, and they're paying the price. And by the way, they're still holding hostages. They haven't agreed to a ceasefire. They're still holding hostages, torturing and killing people and firing rockets at Israelis. And that's never on the front page. Kind of amazing. But they still take the word of what the the Washington Post calls the Enclave's health ministry, which is Hamas. And they claim it's likely an undercount. Yeah, 60,000 from Hamas. They're probably lowballing the number. You know how they tend to understate things.
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think, and that is our job.
Yeah.
The New York Times has a ridiculous article today attacking Donald Trump, of course. And they're talking about illegal alien gang members coming in and raping and plundering and doing all the things Democrats do. The headline in the New York Times is, there is a name for what Trump is doing, Juan Crow. Juan Crow. Juan, like Juan, the, Latinx name. Crow, and it's supposed to be like Jim Crow. Keeping in mind that every single Jim Crow law was a Democrat Party law 100% of the time. Every single Jim Crow law, Democrat law. There's a name for what Trump is doing, Juan Crow. And wait, isn't Juan like Spanish for John? And wouldn't it be Jaime Crow? Wouldn't it be Jaime Crow? But the Democrats are so stupid. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean. Juan Crow and who gets to be an American. You know, when you tap on it online, it changes the headlines on you. There's a name for what Trump is doing, Juan Crow. Aren't they amazing? They're ridiculous people. We've got very little time, but let's go to Jim calling from Kensington, Maryland. Jimmy, I got about a minute for you, but fire away, my friend.
Hey, Chris. Good morning. Just a quick question. Do you think that the Russians could have possibly triggered that undersea quake to destroy the West Coast to hurt the Democrats for the 2026 midterms?
In order to help Trump and the Republicans?
Yes.
You know, that is a distinct possibility. This could be tomorrow's New York Times headline, Jim. You could be ahead of the curve once again. You obviously follow the news very closely and politics very closely. And it's true. We should be looking for a subterranean nuclear detonation that the Russians used in order to help Trump. And it'll be, let's ask John Brennan what he thinks about that. Let's ask the FBI.